At 67, former royal designer finally breaks silence on Queen Elizabeth. Angela Kelly was more than just a royal dresser. She was one of the few people who saw the real Queen Elizabeth behind the palace doors. At 67, Angela is finally speaking out, breaking a silence that lasted decades. For years, she lived and worked close to the Queen, sharing both serious and light moments with the woman who wore the crown. Now, she's telling her side of the story, not to gain fame, but to honor a friendship that was built on trust, respect, and love. Angela knew the Queen in ways few others ever could. She wasn't just someone who picked out clothes or managed jewelry. She was a silent companion during some of the Queen's most private and powerful moments. The world always saw Queen Elizabeth as graceful and composed, but Angela saw her laugh, cry, rest, and reflect. This is the story of the bond between a humble woman from Liverpool and one of the most powerful women in the world. Angela Kelly's journey to the royal household was anything but ordinary. Born in Liverpool in 1957, Angela grew up in a working-class family. Her father worked as a crane operator, and her mother was a nurse. She never forgot her roots, and kept her Liverpudlian accent, even as she walked through the halls of Buckingham Palace. Angela began her career not as a designer, but as a housekeeper at the British Embassy in Berlin. In 1992, Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip visited the embassy, and Angela happened to speak with the Queen casually about her plans to return to England. That short conversation changed everything. A few months later, Angela received an invitation to join the royal household. By 1993, she was officially hired as one of the Queen's dressers. Within 3 years, she was promoted to senior dresser. After the Queen's childhood friend and longtime dresser, Bobo MacDonald, passed away, Angela was stepping into big shoes, but she carved out a place all her own. Not by demanding attention, but by quietly proving herself every day. Angela quickly became more than a staff member. She became someone the Queen deeply trusted. Over time, Angela earned a special place in the Queen's life, not just professionally, but personally. She eventually moved into the palace itself, a rare privilege that showed just how close she and the Queen had become. Angela once said, "I love the Queen and everything about her. She has allowed me to get close to her, and she has trusted me for a long time." This closeness didn't happen overnight. It was built through years of loyalty, kindness, and an understanding of what the Queen needed. Often without being asked, Angela brought humor, warmth, and attention to detail into the Queen's daily life. They shared laughter, quiet talks, and unforgettable memories, many of which never made it into the public eye. When Angela was given the formal title, personal advisor and curator to Her Majesty jewelry, insignias, and wardrobe, it wasn't just a promotion. It was a sign of how important she had become, not just as a dresser, but as someone who shaped the Queen's public image with care and thoughtfulness. What made Angela's role so important was not just the clothes, but what they represented. To the public, the Queen always looked perfect: colorful coats, elegant hats, and carefully chosen brooches. But behind every outfit was Angela, planning months in advance. If the Queen was visiting a country in November, Angela started thinking about her outfit as early as spring. She considered the weather, the local customs, and how the Queen would be seen by the crowd and the cameras. Angela revealed that the Queen's bright colors weren't just a personal style, they were necessary. The Queen needed to be seen from balconies and faraway corners of crowds. Those bright colors made her stand out. Angela also honored the past by using old fabrics from the royal archives, sometimes from as far back as the 1960s. Instead of wasting them, she turned them into something fresh and elegant. Angela made sure each outfit wasn't just beautiful, it told a story, one stitched with history, purpose, and identity. But Angela's care for the Queen went far beyond fashion. It touched on the deeply personal. One of the most touching things she did was break in the Queen's new shoes by wearing them herself inside the palace. This helped soften the leather so the Queen wouldn't get blisters during long public events. No one told her to do it, she simply knew it would help. Angela's workroom was like a royal archive, with photos, fabric swatches, and careful notes to avoid repeating outfits. If the Queen needed to rewear a coat, Angela would update it with small changes so it felt new again. She even laid out accessories and gave the Queen options rather than orders because their relationship was based on mutual respect. Angela was the Queen's style guardian, image manager, and above all, a quiet friend who made sure every detail was right, even when the world wasn't watching. One of the most unforgettable moments in Queen Elizabeth's public life was during the 2012 London Olympics, and Angela played a surprising role in it. The Queen shocked the world when she appeared on screen alongside James Bond in a short film, and then seemed to parachute into the stadium. It was unexpected, bold, and instantly iconic. Many people assumed a queen would say no to such an idea, but Angela knew better. When director Danny Boyle approached the palace with the suggestion, Angela encouraged the Queen to go for it. She knew Her Majesty had a playful side, and she believed this was a rare chance to connect with younger generations in a modern and fun way. The plan worked perfectly. The Queen said, "Good evening, Mr. Bond," on camera, and the world was stunned. Moments later, she appeared live in the royal box to thunderous applause. Angela had helped make it happen, not with a grand gesture, but with a gentle nudge and quiet confidence in the Queen's ability to surprise the world. Angela Kelly is now sharing these stories, not to expose secrets, but to honor a life she shared closely with Queen Elizabeth. From April Fool's Day pranks to the quiet acts of service that no one saw, Angela paints a picture of a queen who was kind, witty, and deeply human. She reminds us that behind the royal wave, behind the state banquets and political duties, was a woman who laughed at jokes, felt the pain of loss, and leaned on trusted friends like Angela. The silence has finally been broken, not with scandal, but with warmth. Angela's words allow the world to see Queen Elizabeth in a new light. Through Angela's eyes, we meet the Queen not as a symbol, but as a person. And in doing so, we also come to see Angela Kelly as much more than a royal dresser. She was a silent force, a loyal guardian, and a friend who never left the Queen's side. For over 2 decades, Angela Kelly stood behind one of the most powerful women in the world, Queen Elizabeth II. But she was never just a dresser or stylist. She was something more. In the quiet, elegant rooms of Buckingham Palace, Angela became a trusted friend, a loyal helper, and a hidden part of royal history. While the world focused on the Queen's speeches, crowns, and public appearances, Angela stayed just out of view. She chose silence, privacy, and service over attention. But now, at the age of 67, Angela Kelly has begun to share the untold stories of what life was really like behind palace doors. Her words reveal more than fashion secrets. They show a personal, human side of the Queen that the public rarely saw. One day, deep inside the palace, Angela decided to play a small joke. She handed the Queen a toy as part of a light-hearted prank. Most people would be too afraid to do something like that with a monarch. But Angela and the Queen shared a special bond. The Queen looked at the toy with a straight face and, in her famous dry voice, said, "You're joking." Then she burst out laughing. That laughter wasn't just a reaction to the joke. It showed something rare and beautiful, a private friendship, built on trust, respect, and shared humor. Angela was more than an employee. She was one of the very few people allowed into the Queen's inner world. In a place filled with rules and royal traditions, Angela brought warmth and lightness. She helped the Queen feel normal again, even during the most serious moments in front of the world's cameras. Angela's job involved more than helping the Queen get dressed. She was always there in the background, making sure everything was just right. The earrings matched the dress. The shoes were broken in. The hat sat perfectly on Her Majesty's head. Angela wasn't in the spotlight, but she was always close, an invisible part of every big moment. Right before the Queen stepped into rooms full of flashing cameras and waiting crowds, Angela would often whisper a soft joke or fix a last detail. These small things made a big difference. The world saw grace and confidence. But behind that royal presence was Angela's calming support. She didn't just manage style. She helped create the Queen's mood, keeping her steady during stressful times. Every smile and graceful step was backed by Angela's careful, quiet work. But Angela's most touching act didn't take place during a royal event or a grand ceremony. It happened with a piece of fabric, a dress that held deep royal meaning. In 2004, the Queen came to Angela with a request that wasn't about fashion at all. It was about memory and family. The royal christening gown, first made in 1841 for Queen Victoria's eldest daughter, had been worn by more than 60 royal babies. Over generations, it became one of the most precious royal items. But after so many years, the gown had become too fragile. The Queen knew it couldn't be used anymore, but she didn't want it forgotten. She wanted a new gown, one that looked and felt just like the old one. She didn't trust this job to just anyone. She chose Angela. Angela understood the importance of this task right away. This wasn't about sewing clothes. It was about preserving history, emotion, and tradition. The gown wasn't just made of silk and lace, held the memories of royal births and family joy. Angela, who had worked so closely with the Queen, knew this wasn't just a project. It was a symbol of royal life, passed down through generations. She and her team studied every part of the original gown carefully. The lace had to match perfectly. The feel of the fabric had to be the same. Even the weight and the way it flowed needed to be identical. They searched for the right materials, finally finding lace in Italy, known for delicate high-quality fabric. But there was a problem. The new lace looked too new. It didn't have the soft, aged look of the original. That's when Angela made a surprising decision. Instead of looking for special tools or chemicals, she turned to something simple and very British tea. She brewed pots of Yorkshire tea, then soaked the lace in it. Slowly, the bright white fabric changed. It became creamy and slightly yellowed, just like the original. The tea gave the lace a gentle aged charm that made the new gown look like it had always been a part of royal history. It was a clever and humble solution. Angela didn't panic or overcomplicate things. She used her knowledge and creativity to find a perfect answer. That one decision, using tea bags to color royal lace, showed who Angela truly was: practical, caring, and deeply connected to both tradition and detail. When the new gown was finally ready, it was more than beautiful. It was meaningful. The first royal baby to wear the new gown was James, Viscount Severn, the Queen's youngest grandson, during his christening in 2008. That moment was quiet and respectful, but powerful. It showed that the royal family could honor their past while still moving into the future. Since then, the gown has been worn by many royal babies, including Prince George, Princess Charlotte, Prince Louis, and even Archie, the son of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. Every time the gown appeared in public, it reminded people of how traditions last not just through crowns and castles, but through careful hands like Angela's. She had taken something almost lost to time and given it new life. In doing so, she became part of royal history herself, even if her name was rarely mentioned. But perhaps the most personal part of Angela's story happened not with fabric or royal jewels, but during one of the most difficult times in modern history. In 2020, as the COVID-19 pandemic changed the world, Buckingham Palace closed its gates. Public events were cancelled. Ceremonies disappeared. The Queen's world became quiet and small. She and Prince Philip moved to Windsor Castle, where only a small group of staff were allowed inside. They called it the HMS Bubble. Just 20 people, all giving up their normal lives to protect the Queen. Angela Kelly was one of them. Inside the bubble, life was not easy. Staff could not see their families. They worked every day in silence and isolation. But Angela stayed, just as loyal as ever. She did more than dress the Queen. She cared for her, made her smile, and brought comfort. In a time of fear, while the world outside struggled, Angela gave her full heart to protecting Her Majesty. This wasn't part of her job description. It wasn't about fashion anymore. It was about love and duty. Angela gave up months of her life not for attention, not for praise, but because the Queen mattered to her deeply. Angela Kelly never chased the spotlight. For years, she remained in the background, silent and strong. But now, her quiet voice is finally being heard, and the world is beginning to understand just how important she was. She wasn't just someone who prepared clothes. She prepared memories. She protected traditions. She supported the Queen in ways no one else could. Angela's story shows us a different side of royal life, the personal, private, and emotional side that often goes unseen. At 67, she is no longer hiding her story, but even now, she shares it with the same grace and respect that defined her entire career. She speaks not to gain fame, but to honor the woman she served. Angela Kelly's story is not about crowns or fashion shows. It's about friendship, loyalty, and the quiet strength of a woman who stood behind a queen through history, humor, and heartbreak. She didn't wear a title, but she carried a legacy. And as she finally steps out from behind the curtain, the world now sees what the Queen saw all along: a woman of heart, humility, and true royal spirit. Angela Kelly was not a royal by blood. She didn't wear a crown or live in a palace suite. But over more than 20 years, she became one of the most trusted people in Queen Elizabeth II's inner circle. As the Queen's personal dresser, later her close confidant, Angela saw sides of the monarch that the world never imagined. During the Queen's final years, especially through the quiet and lonely days of the COVID-19 pandemic, their bond grew stronger than ever. Angela didn't just manage wardrobes. She managed moments of grief, support, and friendship. And when the Queen gave Angela permission to write about their time together, something extraordinary happened. For the first time in royal history, A staff member was allowed to share personal stories while the Queen was still alive. What followed was a heartfelt memoir, and a window into the life of a woman the world thought they knew, but didn't really. During the pandemic, Queen Elizabeth and Angela Kelly entered what was known as the HMS Bubble, a small, tightly managed group of staff who stayed with the Queen at Windsor Castle to keep her safe from the virus. This time changed everything. The palace was no longer filled with its usual team of helpers. There were no makeup artists, hairdressers, or press officers bustling about. It was quiet, slower, more personal. Angela found herself doing things she had never done before. She curled the Queen's hair before virtual meetings, helped her choose simple outfits for video calls, and even shared afternoon tea with her, sometimes in silence, other times through soft laughter. These were private moments. No cameras were present. No newspapers reported them. But for Angela, these were the most meaningful times of her career and, perhaps, the Queen's final chapter of personal closeness. One of the most emotional moments came after the death of Prince Philip in April 2021. Queen Elizabeth had lost her husband of over 70 years, and the world watched as she sat alone at his funeral, masked and distanced. But behind the scenes, Angela was there. She supported the Queen quietly, without seeking any attention. There were no photographs of these moments, but the weight of grief hung in every hallway, every room. Angela dressed the Queen, stood beside her, and offered silent comfort during one of the darkest periods of her life. She was more than a dresser, she was a friend, a source of strength. And when life began to return to normal and the royal bubble dissolved, Angela did something no one expected. With the Queen's approval, she wrote a book. The memoir was called The Other Side of the Coin: The Queen, the Dresser, and the Wardrobe. It wasn't written for fame or scandal. It wasn't full of gossip or secrets. Instead, it told Angela's truth, what it was like to serve the Queen, travel with her, and witness the woman behind the crown. What made it so special was the Queen's involvement. Angela didn't wait until after the Queen passed away. The Queen herself had given her the green light to share these stories while she was still alive. This was unheard of. The royal household is famous for its silence. Staff are expected to be invisible, loyal, and quiet. But Queen Elizabeth made an exception for Angela. She trusted her. She wanted the world to see who she really was. Beyond the diamonds and tiaras, Angela's book gave readers a warm, personal look at royal life. She described dressing the Queen before state banquets, sharing inside jokes over breakfast, and how the Queen sometimes made last-minute decisions that caused a stir among staff. These stories didn't show a cold, distant ruler. They showed a woman who laughed, who had routines, and who even had preferences, like everyone else. Angela knew exactly how the Queen liked her silk scarves folded. She knew which colors to avoid, what shoes needed breaking in, and which brooches held sentimental value. In fact, Angela would often wear the Queen's new shoes herself to break them in so Her Majesty wouldn't feel discomfort. These details may seem small, but they revealed a deep understanding and care that went far beyond duty. Yet writing this book wasn't easy. Angela knew she was stepping into unknown territory. Even with the Queen's blessing, some palace insiders were uncomfortable with the idea. Tradition in the royal household is built on silence. Staff don't speak. They don't write. They don't reveal. Angela was walking a fine line. She knew that many behind palace doors might see her openness as betrayal. Some whispered that she had grown too close to the Queen. Others said she was acting like a celebrity, forgetting her place. But Angela's loyalty was never to fame. It was to the Queen. And the Queen had made herself clear. It was time to tell the world her softer side. The memoir became a bestseller. Readers around the world were moved by Angela's honesty, her respectful tone, and the tender picture she painted of the Queen. The book wasn't flashy or dramatic. It was full of small, meaningful moments. Like the time the Queen chose a piece of jewelry based on memory instead of protocol, or how she would laugh over a wardrobe mishap instead of becoming frustrated. These moments made Queen Elizabeth feel human. They showed a woman with a gentle spirit, a dry sense of humor, and a heart full of love for her duty, but also for those around her. Angela's words helped remove the distance between the crown and the people. They showed that behind the grandeur was a woman who simply wanted to be understood. Perhaps the most touching part of Angela's memoir was the Queen's secret wish she had never made public. For decades, Queen Elizabeth had been seen in a very formal way. Every photo was carefully posed. Every appearance was designed to uphold tradition. The Queen was always perfect. Stiff collars, matching hats, flawless expressions. But Angela revealed that deep down, the Queen wanted something else. She wanted to be seen informally, relaxed, real, and authentic. She longed for a photograph that wasn't staged, one that showed her just as she was, without the weight of centuries of royal expectations. Angela, knowing this unspoken desire, arranged a private photo session. It was quiet, simple, and deeply moving. No royal staff rushing in, no flashing lights, just the Queen being herself. One of the photos captured during this session was unforgettable. It showed the Queen with her hands casually in her pockets. A small gesture, but one that said so much. It showed a monarch letting go of formality for a moment. It was a quiet act of rebellion, a gentle break from decades of rigid tradition, and it made the Queen more relatable than ever before. This was not just a queen. This was a woman finding her own voice, even in silence. Angela's book was filled with such stories, touching, warm, and often surprising. Readers learned about the Queen's frugality, how she reused old fabrics from the royal stockroom, instead of always ordering new gowns. They saw her love of routine and her quick wit. Angela shared how the Queen even enjoyed April Fool's pranks and had a soft spot for practical jokes. These moments brought the Queen to life in ways that no royal biography ever had. She wasn't just the figure in history books. She was a mother, a wife, a leader, and a woman of strong spirit and quiet strength. The public response was overwhelmingly positive. People from all over the world thanked Angela for showing them a different side of the Queen, one that wasn't shaped by tradition alone, but also by heart. Angela didn't tear down the monarchy. She gently peeled back the curtain, revealing a woman full of dignity and warmth. For many, the other side of the coin became more than a book. It was a gift, a way to remember Queen Elizabeth not only as a monarch, but as a person. In the end, Angela Kelly's brave choice to share her story wasn't about breaking rules. It was about honoring the Queen's trust and showing the world something precious: the power of quiet loyalty, the beauty of everyday moments, and the humanity of a woman who wore a crown but never let it hide her true self. At 67 years old, Angela didn't just break her silence, she opened a door. And through that door, we saw the Queen in a way we never had before.